AP World History, Trimester 2 Final, Unit 7 and Review. Take a look at number 1, this image from the University of Michigan Museum of Art, Museum Purchase 1935.20. Which of the following best describes the 1936 lithograph entitled The Hero by German artist George Grosz? A propaganda poster prepared by the Nazi Party. B, a protest poster against the atrocities of the atomic bomb. C, a representation of a Holocaust victim. Or D, a post-First World War print expressing anti-war sentiment. By the 1930s, many Europeans were ready to leave behind the liberal democratic order created by after 1918 by Britain, France, and the United States for a more authoritarian future. What they did not bargain for was the brutal reality of Nazi imperialism and the denial of all national aspirations apart from German ones. No experience was more crucial to the development of Europe in the 20th century. As both Hitler and Stalin were well aware, the Second World War involved something far more profound than a series of military engagements and diplomatic negotiations. It was a struggle for the social and political future of the continent itself. And such was the shock of being subjected to a regime of unprecedented and unremitting violence that in the space of 8 years a sea change took place in European political and social attitudes, and they rediscovered the virtues of democracy. Hitler's war aimed at the complete racial reconstitution of Europe. There was no historical parallels for such a subject. In Europe, neither Napoleon nor the Habsburgs had aimed at getting such exclusive domination. In its violence and racism, Nazi imperialism drew more from European precedents in Asia, Africa, and especially the Americas. When we eat wheat from Canada, remarked Hitler one evening during the war, we don't think about the despoiled Indians. On another occasion, he described the Ukraine as Germany's new Indian Empire. But if Europeans would have resented being ruled by as the British ruled India, they were shocked at being submitted to an experience closer to that inflicted upon the native populations of the Americas. End quote. This is Mark Nassauer, British historian, from the Dark Continent, Europe's 20th Century, from 2000. Which of the following was the most important factor behind European readiness to embrace authoritarian political systems in the 1930s? A, dissatisfaction with the welfare state. B, admiration of the economic achievements of the Soviet Union under Stalin. C, the economic crisis caused by the Great Depression. D, resentment of United States mass culture and consumer society. Question number 3. Which of the following is an appropriate comparison of the Chinese and the Mexican revolutions during the 20th century? A, both promoted imperialism. B, both were supported by Japan. C, both promoted religious education. D, both were supported by an elite group of landlords. E, both generated land distribution policies. Question number 4. Article 11. The Emperor has supreme command of the Army and Navy. Article 13. The Emperor declares war, makes peace, and concludes treaties. Japan's 1889 Constitution. Article 9. Aspiring sincerely to an international peace based on justice and order, the Japanese people forever renounce war and the threat or use of force as a means of settling international disputes. In order to accomplish the aims of the preceding paragraph, land, sea, and air forces will never be maintained. From the Japan's 1947 Constitution. The difference in the passages above are most likely a result of which of the following? A, ideological struggle between communist and capitalist political parties. B, the Japanese emperor's acceptance of Enlightenment ideals. C, demilitarization imposed by the United States after the Second World War. Or D, the persistence of mass anti-war protests in Japan. Question 5. Which of the following most directly led to the start of the First World War? European powers meeting in Berlin in 1884 and 1885 to divide Africa into colonies. B. Nationalist competition among industrialized powers for resources. C. Japanese imperialist expansion into Korea and China. Or D. Political tensions between communist and capitalist states. Number 6. The global economic downturn of the 1930s had which of the following effects on nations in Europe and North America? A. International trade increased because nations lowered trade barriers. B. Industrialized countries became more democratic as the public sought greater input in the making of economic policy. C. Most imperial powers granted independence to their colonies because the cost of maintaining empires became unsustainable. Or D. Governments took a more active role in directing and regulating their economies to stimulate growth. Number 7. Lenin used severe methods only in the most necessary cases, when the exploiting classes were still in existence and were vigorously opposing revolution. Stalin, on the other hand, used extreme methods and mass repressions at a time when the revolution was already victorious, when the Soviet state was strengthened, when the exploiting classes were already liquidated, and when our party was politically consolidated and had strengthened itself both numerically and ideologically. Nikita Khrushchev, Soviet leader, 1956. This passage best exemplifies which of the following historical developments? A. Khrushchev's attempts to distance his rule from Stalinist atrocities. B. Khrushchev's defense of communism as an alternative to the free market capitalism. C. The Soviet Union's deployment of ballistic missiles to Cuba. Or D. The diplomatic split between Communist China and the Soviet Union. Question 8. I give the people to understand that neither Turkey nor the handful of men Turkey possesses would be placed at the disposal of the Caliph, or leader of the Muslims, so that he might fulfill the mission attributed to him, namely, to found a state comprising the whole of Islam. The people of the new Turkey have no reason to think anything else but their own existence and their own welfare. Turkey has nothing more to give away to others. Mustafa Kemal, President of Turkey, Speech to the Party Congress, 1927. In the excerpt above, Mustafa Kemal is most clearly supported in which of the following? A. Fundamentalism. B. Totalitarianism. C. Marxism. Or D. Nationalism. Number 9. A historian researching the motives of the perpetrators of the Holocaust would find which of the following sources most useful? A. Letters and publications written by Nazi leaders before the Second World War. B. The Diary of Anne Frank, written by a Jewish girl who lived in hiding from the Nazis during the Second World War. C. Reports of Adolf Hitler's Wehrmachtputsch in 1923, attempts to take over the German government. Or D. Field reports from German, British, and Russian generals published after the Second World War. Number 1. Scientists have reached general agreement in recognizing that mankind is one, that all men belong to the same species, Homo sapiens. 10. The scientific material available to us at present does not justify the conclusions that inherited genetic differences are a major factor in producing differences between the cultures and cultural achievements of different people or groups. 14. The biological facts of race and the myth of race should be distinguished. From all practical social purposes, race is not so much a biological phenomenon as a social myth. The myth of race has created an enormous amount of human and social damage. In recent years, it has taken a heavy toll in human lives and caused untold suffering. A. According to present knowledge, there is no proof that the groups of mankind differ in their innate mental characteristics, whether in respect of intelligence or temperament. B. There is no evidence that race mixtures as such produces bad results from the biological point of view. C. All normal human beings are capable of learning to share in common life or understand the nature of mutual service and reciprocity, and to respect social obligations and contracts. This comes to us from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, statement about the, quote, science of race, end quote, from 1949. The Declaration's mention of a heavy toll in the third paragraph was most likely a reference to which of the following? The casualties of war, the First World War. B. The deaths that occurred as a result of the use of the nuclear weapons during the Second World War. C. The deaths that occurred during the Holocaust. Or D. The mass violence that occurred under communist leaders such as Mao Zedong.